Alright, so today's video literally is this. We're going to talk about this thing right here, a lance. Because I don't feel like blue Lance Cavalry need much more discussion. But memes aside, we're going to also mention Fernand in this video. Let's do it.
Let the lesson begin.
What's up guys, Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. Today's video is going to talk about Instant Lance and Fernand. So as with every Blue Lance Cavalry video, it's going to be a little bit difficult to justify his presence, considering we just had Orson, and before that we had some actual good, even one-off premium lances like Ingrid, for example. And yeah, I will talk about all those in this video, but this will be more difficult, so it's going to be short and sweet, I think. I don't think there's going to be too much to talk about, but there are some things that are worth mentioning for Fernand and helping you make a decision if you ever, if you like him or you were looking at adding a specific role to mostly your defense team, but there are some AR offense implications as well here. So I listed all of them here, like all the Blue Lance Cavs, including the premium options. And as with like most things, it's just my opinion, and don't take it too seriously. Like, just because I say Fernand isn't too good in this video, that doesn't mean you can't use him. I think there are actually a few places you could use him, but I gotta make sure I'm objective here and bring you guys the hard facts and the data, and that's what we have here. So highest attack stats actually Doisol, and Orson behind him. Okay, but as you'll see in a moment, that has been dethroned. Now, I'm actually not going to talk about Doisol or Orson in this video. Orson has his own video, and I'm not going to talk about Doisol either, even on defense, because personally, I don't think solo conditions are that good on defense, which is going to be a focus of this video for sure. I don't feel like solo conditions are easy to basically set up. I've used them quite a bit on different units on my defense, and they are very inconsistent. Like, even with the AI changes, your units will still tend to group up and disable the solo conditions, and your unit is either like amazing or not. So it's always better to have units that don't rely on those solo conditions and have weapons or skills like catch or ARD skills which are consistently good and don't rely on solos, which is why Doisol and Orson just aren't really going to be talked about here. But anyways, about that attack stat. So it may surprise you folks, but Fernand actually has the highest attack stat in the game for Blue Lance Cavs, which is very impressive for me. Like, I thought it was just another Blue Lance Cav, but 41 base attack is actually fairly respectable, and he does actually come with decent fodder too, in the form of Instant Lance, which you'll see below me for the effect. And that does put him in a special place, quote unquote special place, because this does put him into potentially some decent ways of use on defense or potentially offense. Now, that doesn't mean, oh my god, invest. He's not that special, and he'll likely get outclassed in time, but at this time, he does at least have something going for him. His stat spread looks a little bit similar to Orson, but just with more attack, and I guess a little bit more HP, I think, but just look on the slide behind. But that's not the focus here. His fodder is basically Sword Breaker, Threat and Attack Defense, and Instant Lance. Instant Lance is good and definitely worth considering for many different defense options. First thing I'd actually recommend if you really are a big Fernand fan is running a Galeforce build. Now, I feel like I get comments of like, why do you recommend Galeforce builds? Galeforce is a superb strategy, and you should absolutely invest into a Galeforce team or set of units. And if a unit can do Galeforce strategies, you should make use of that. Like Fallen Edel, Pirate to Barn, literally Blue Lance Cavs like this, you're totally fine to initiate those sort of strategies and make them happen. So yes, Fernand is actually a pretty solid Galeforce unit because he has an attack stat where he can easily meet those heavy blade checks. Now this Fernand is going to want either Raphael or maybe Valoria or now we even have Soth as a way to accelerate his special down to 2. With 2 charge, he's going to meet that heavy blade condition off of 1 hit. So if you're running into a front line that's very fragile, he's going to get the 1 shot off pretty easily, actually. And then with Near Trace, this is really good, nice synergy with Galeforce to position him in a way to potentially trap your opponents. As I said, Galeforce strategies are an amazing thing to add to your repertoire. Don't just end turn all your opponents. Consider the actual power of a Galeforce team and how enemies, like most teams, aren't designed to handle that sort of play. They're a bit harder to execute, but if you do, and you do it well, you will be able to conquer most teams that otherwise look like a complete and utter loss. So Fernand is actually really good at this because he has a really high base attack stat. If you like Fernand, you probably should invest into him this heavily. Of course, with fodder, make use of what you have. Heavy Blade 3, obviously, lull attack, defense, lull speed defense. Anything like that is probably totally fine. And of course, the alternative is Slaying Lance's Curtains, where he can actually become fully independent, doesn't need any other special acceleration. Curtains plus Quick Impulse will put him exactly where he needs to be to just get going by himself. You could even use him with Wings of Mercy if you have other units to set up, such as like Soth or something like that. All of those absolutely can get the job done, and that is where I feel he actually excels the most out of all Blue Lance Cavs right now, which is impressive. However, because of Instant Lance and his high attack stat, defense is also a good consideration for Fernand. You don't even have to really change much when it comes to his weapon. And I mean, attack IV would be preferred just to really ramp up that damage. Plus speed IV could also be pretty good here. And with fodder, as always, alternatives could be like attack defense push or attack defense catch. Those are all solid additions. I like the anti-meta of impact from Instant Lance, guard to deny stuff like bonfires off of Brave Hector or even Brave Edelgard, and they will miss kills against stuff like this. Fatal Smoke to deny healing, because a lot of tanks are using either inbuilt healing or they have like Mystic Boost built in. So like guard is an amazing B skill now, even probably better than like lull, I'd say, for like Cavs. And so Instant Lance, guard, and Fatal Smoke, if you have all that, it's like a complete package to actually create a really annoying unit that will likely not die, maybe get danced, maybe go and snipe a different unit, and all of that is pretty good, and Fernand definitely makes use of it. However, he does compete with some other, probably better Blue Lance Cavs, so they are going to be mentioned here, and the first one is actually Petrine. So as you guys know, I'm a pretty big fan of Petrine, and I'm waiting for my time to pull the trigger and invest. Likely will be soon. However, I don't know for sure whether she's actually the best use of Instant Lance, considering her preference weapon is already pretty good. It's anti-beast and it hits res, which are both two very unique things to her for the most part. But considering that, she does actually have an amazing stat spread, like an offensive stat spread that involves a high attack and high speed stat. And with Instant Lance is actually pretty important, because if the enemy runs like no follow-up or they run QR, you actually want a speed stat to make sure that you're still denying follow-ups, or at least getting your own follow-up, like your own double off of those type of foes. So Petrine is actually a solid candidate for Instant Lance. If you want her to do physical damage, I'd say that's probably her second best lance behind her preference weapon. But again, same idea, guard, Fatal Smoke, Instant Lance, you get an impact effect, you get to deny the special, you get Fatal Smoke, and you deny healing. Like this is a really solid package to add on a defense team. So it doesn't really matter whether you use Fernand or Petrine, you kind of pick your flavor here. And I feel like Petrine's a little bit more flexible than Fernand, because at least you could swap over to her weapon should the meta demand it. And the meta might probably demand it, considering Fallen Nettle's all over the place. But that doesn't mean Fernand can't deal with it either. Another solid candidate that I probably don't talk about enough is actually Death Knight and his preference weapon, which is Scythe of Serial. So if you don't know what this does, it's basically if the opponent has buffs or some sort of bonus movement or something, which, by the way, Fallen Nettle, he denies their follow-up. So this is really good too. He has already like a sort of impact effect, plus he gets extra stats. And he has a decent stat spread. Pretty similar, a little bit lower, but he does make up for it by having 10 Cav Flowers versus 5. So same idea. Again, make use of what you have in terms of fodder. Like, don't just look at this and be like, oh, I don't have Fatal Smoke. That's fine. You could probably use Panic Smoke. You could probably use Joint Drive, Ward Cav, who knows. Whatever your team comp demands, make use of what you have. And Death Knight, I just wanted to bring to his attention, is a solid option. But if I was really to talk about like even premium options here, I do think Ingrid wins against everyone. Like all the ones I mentioned here, because even at a +1, Ingrid's weapon is exactly what you need to deal with most meta units. The units I just mentioned, Death Knight, Petrine, and Fernand, except Petrine if you use a preference weapon, likely do like 0 or like less than 10 damage against most of the super tanks in the game right now. And Lewin circumvents this by not only having Wind Sweep, so she won't get retaliated on, but she also does true damage based on her speed. So this is very powerful in the game because it doesn't matter how bulky the enemies are, you will just cut through it by just having solid attack and speed and not fearing the retaliation of those tanks as well. Now, the other definitely the other Blue Lance Cavs will likely survive the tanks because of guard, but Ingrid is really solid here and probably the best Blue Lance Cav on defense at the moment, and I have to respect and fear her sometimes when I run into her. So if you were looking for the Blue Lance Cav, I'd still think Ingrid is the most solid addition, but that doesn't mean that Petrine, Deathling, or Fernand aren't bad considerations either. It's just something to think about. So yeah, that's about it, folks, when it comes to all these Blue Lance Cavs. I feel like I talk about them all the time, but in reality, you just look at this like chart here, and you'll see that they all look fairly similar, right? Like the stat spreads are fairly similar. Fernand does take the top here. He's just not shown because it hasn't been updated, and that is respectable. But when it comes to it, it's either have an amazing preference weapon, be a pretty premium unit, or just don't, and then you end up Fernand and probably have like 5 minutes of fame. That's gonna be it for me, folks. If you've been looking forward to the Not video with Pathfinder, I'm still collecting footage on that and trying to really combine it into something really concise and informative for you guys. So look forward to that in a few days, maybe tomorrow. I'm not sure. When I get it done, when I have the right footage, you'll definitely see it. And then there will be a replay pack involving Nod at the end of the week. So that's going to be pretty good to look forward to. As always, I thank you guys for watching. Thumbs up, crush it. Sub if you haven't. If you like this content, you want to keep see it coming, for what we do, check out the Patreon. That's the best way. You can also join Twitch. Prime subs are free. Love you all. See you in the next one. Peace.
It's over.